Welcome to the Carolina Business Leadership Show, where we share real conversations with business owners and leaders across North and South Carolina. I'm your host, Aubrey Fitzloff, agency owner, team leader, and someone who believes business is built on relationships, not transactions. Each episode, we bring you practical insights, leadership lessons, and real stories from the front lines of Each episode, we bring you practical insights, leadership lessons, and real stories from the front lines of running and growing a business in the Carolinas. Let's get into it. This morning's guest is Cristina Hall. Cristina is the co-founder of Ginger's Revenge, a craft brewery in Asheville, North Carolina, known for its bold flavors, sustainable practices, and deep community roots. In this conversation, Cristina shares the story behind the business, what it's like to lead alongside her husband, and the personal growth that comes from building a purpose-driven brand. Her insights on leadership, resilience, and stretchy moments offer valuable lessons for entrepreneurs navigating both business and life. Cristina, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Cristina, let's just start at the beginning. What first sparked the idea for Ginger's Revenge, and how did it grow from concept to company?
Yes. So the journey for Ginger's Revenge started many years ago. It was actually a trip to Asheville in 2009, where my husband and I just kind of like really fell in love with the craft beer culture. And on the drive back home to Nashville, he decided he was going to start homebrewing. And so he had been homebrewing already more traditional beers for a couple years before he started making hard ginger beer. And it was actually when we were living in Panama. It was really hard for him to source ingredients for traditional beer down there. And we had been introduced to hard ginger beer at a family reunion. And being the good home brewer that he is, he looked at the ingredient list, sugar, ginger, fresh citrus juice, and just decided to make it a gallon at a time. And we fell in love with it as a beverage. We would drink it straight or have it in dark and stormies with Panamanian rum. And when we moved to Asheville, this, I guess, was towards the end of 2012, he kept making it. And around that time, I actually found out I was gluten intolerant, so I couldn't drink traditional beer anymore. And he was like, "Don't worry, I'm going to keep the house stocked with ginger beer for you." And on a whim, we brought the ginger beer to the Just Brew It Homebrew Fest, which is a fundraiser for Just Economics. This was in May of 2013. And people were just blown away. Out of 100 beers served that day, ours was selected as the crowd favorite. People asked us all day, "Where can I buy this? I want to see this at Whole Foods." And both of our wheels just started spinning. I think we had drafted a business plan within a week of that event. We sat on the idea for a couple years and then decided to take the leap. In the spring of 2015, it took us about 2 years to get the doors open, and we opened in March of 2017.
What did those early days look like for you and your husband as co-founders? And was there a moment when you realized we're really doing this?
Yeah, I mean, looking back on it now, a decade later, it's just really wild to think about. There was so much that we didn't know, and sometimes you need that, right? Just not knowing and just taking a leap of faith. And so there's so many decisions where it's just like you just have to learn. You just have to do it. You just have to jump in and figure it out. And so I remember the moment where we were making our first brew. So this probably would have been in February of 2017. And we got a traditional brew house set up. We had all the ginger in the mash tun, and we're standing up on the brew platform and we're looking at it together at this, I think the largest batch he had made prior to us making it, commercially was maybe 15 gallons. And all of a sudden we're making 15 barrels. And so we just looked down and then we looked at each other like, my gosh, we're really doing this. Like that is a lot of ginger beer. And there's always a little, when you're like dialing in equipment, not sure how the brew is going to turn out, but it turned out great. And that's what we ended up serving on our opening weekend.
Someone who hasn't been to the brewery or tried your ginger beer, what do you hope they feel or experience when they interact with your brand?
I think the biggest thing we hope people feel is just being delighted. Like we really strive to make a beverage that is just approachable and delightful and fun to drink. And so all of our flavors, really just play to that. Our lime agave is one of our most popular on draft, and that's inspired by a Moscow Mule. And so it has like a pop of fresh citrus. We use fresh lime juice, and we just want people to like be delighted and feel good. And that's really important to us from a customer service standpoint. So in every interaction you have with our team, whether it's in our tasting room or somebody delivering beer or meeting somebody at a festival, like people just walking away feeling excited and inspired and joyful.
Something that you've learned about yourself as a leader that you didn't expect to learn when you started this journey.
I think I didn't realize how much entrepreneurship is so much. It's not just learning to work on your business or how to grow your business or how to grow professional skills. It's also a lot of personal introspection and a lot of self-development. And I really feel like there's kind of this very strong correlation between your willingness to grow as an individual and kind of like look at some of the things that are hard and your ability to tackle those in order to keep your business growing. We're evolving as people, but then also evolving as business leaders. And so I just didn't realize how much introspection there would be in that regard. Or told someone once that, entrepreneurship is like having all of your faults or all your weaknesses under a magnifying glass. We really have to take them out and examine them and work on them and, yeah, learn how to go with them.
You say that business puts your challenges under a magnifying glass. Can you share a moment where that tested you and what helped you grow through it?
Yeah, I think one thing is there's so many patterns, communication patterns, like how we handle conflict, our relationship with money, all of these things that come from our family of origin. So those are some of those narratives might be outdated. You might be operating with like an old operating system. And so, especially in a situation where, my co founder, my business partner is my husband, um, really having to work on communication styles, not just like defaulting to whatever role you might have played in your family growing up. And so David and I we work with a therapist. We see her together. She's amazing. We've been seeing her jointly now for over 3 years. We've worked with business coaches. We've done a variety of different like personality testing to better understand each other and like how we work. And so it's really just, and it's not done, right? Like it's just really a commitment to continuing to recognize those patterns. And so what patterns do I need to build in order to show up in this way?
How do you personally define growth for both your business and for yourself as a founder?
So, how I define growth as a founder and for my business has evolved over time. So, when we started out, we had a clear idea of how we wanted to grow our business, the volume we wanted to get to, our distribution footprint, and the amount of time that we thought it would take to get there. So, external factors definitely have impacted that. It was a little less than 2 years after we started that the pandemic hit. And I think that we also, maybe just like we were kind of talking about how there were aspects of entrepreneurship that I didn't expect. I think that we didn't kind of realize the impact that entrepreneurship has on you, has on your nervous system, and that maybe the speed that we wanted to go to grow our business wasn't necessarily the speed that was like good for us personally in terms of like making sure that we were taking care of ourselves holistically. And so I think that our mindset has really shifted on growth, and we've really kind of redefined what sustainable growth means. Sustainable also meaning like sustainable in our bodies. And I think, our community was recently impacted by Hurricane Helene. I guess it's been about 10 months now. Grow sustainably, do this in something where you can hold and not burn yourself out. David and I have both struggled and worked through burnout since we opened the business. And so, in that regard, in terms of like our personal growth, I think it's just a commitment. It's like every day I show up committing to growing. And a big piece of that is committing to learning and committing to admitting when I'm wrong and committing to seeking to understand first. And so it is really kind of a mindset, I think, that I try to bring with me to my life every day, not just work, but my full life.
I think it's kind of interesting how, as business owners, like timetables, we have this idea in our head of if everything goes perfectly, And I know for me, around the time y'all started your business was around when I started working with my first business coach, and I didn't have any team at that point. And then I had an assistant, and then all of a sudden I hired an agent. And 6 months later, I hired another agent. And 6 months after that, another one. And 8 months later, another one. And my business coach just sat back and laughed at me. And he's like, "You thought it was going to take you this number of years." It's funny how once you get real clear on what growth looks like for you, how it can either accelerate or it'll give you time to catch up for yourself. Let's shift gears a little bit and go back to that community event where the idea of Revenge was first born. How has that shaped the way that you show up for your local community now?
Yeah. I think one of the things I love so much about Asheville is the business community here and then also the craft beverage community here. It's just very collaborative, very supportive. And so to have events like that, right? Where people can showcase their creativity and come together and celebrate and to also support a local nonprofit is just amazing. And so David and I knew it's really important to us starting out to use our platform to give back to the community that supported us. And so we feel a lot of responsibility there. And, we're not a huge company. And I think that we try to be as intentional about it as we can. And so sometimes that's like spreading awareness. Often our partnerships are through our tasting room. So, for example, right now we're raising funds for World Central Kitchen. It was an organization that showed up for the Asheville and Western North Carolina community after Hurricane Helene. And so now that our business is, on more solid footing, it feels really good to be able to support that organization that like showed up for our community. So that's just kind of the lens in which we view business and just feel a lot of responsibility to support community.
You and David have made some bold choices around sustainability. What drives those decisions when they aren't the easiest or most cost effective?
Yeah. So we have chosen to do things the hard way. Our product is currently requires cold chain. So it's not a shelf stable product in the sense of like being able to put it out warm on a shelf. And we've really made that decision because we've really not wanted to use chemical preservatives. Flavor and quality is extremely important to us. So the ingredients that we choose, like we use organic, regeneratively grown sugar, which again is like more expensive, but in terms of supporting that type of agriculture is really important to us. Supporting organic agriculture is important to us. And so it hasn't made things easy. I think that it's slowed down growth in some ways, but I think that our fans and our customers really appreciate that intentionality to quality and to flavor. And so our team has been working for a couple years now. It got slowed down a little bit with the hurricane, but working towards a solution for shelf stability that we feel good about. And so we're getting closer to that. So I can't share details quite yet, but it's exciting to, even though it is kind of doing things the hard way, it's aligning with our values and the things that are important to us and then also that are important to our consumers.
Would you say that a meaningful partnership, whether that's with a nonprofit, a team member, or a vendor, what would you say that meaningful partnership looks like to you?
Yeah, I think for me, meaningful partnership is creating win-win-win scenarios. So whether it's a team member, what is this team member passionate about? What are some of their goals in life? How can our organization and how can their employment with us help them, have it be a vehicle towards their goals? So whether it's like learning a specific skill, whether it's making a certain amount of money, whether, it's being introduced, have it from a networking standpoint, what is a win-win scenario? Same with community partnerships. Like what is important to them? What do they need? How can we support them based on, resources that we have? So how can we kind of like elevate everyone versus it being, like a me scenario. So we really strive for like win-win-win scenarios.
Is it like building a business with your life partner while you guys are also raising a child together? And what's worked for you as co leaders at work and at home?
Running a business together with your life partner and your co parent is not for the faint of heart. It's really something we actively have to work on every day. And again, going back to that, we have an amazing therapist, and that's really important. She's really helped us with communication tools and patterning. I think one of the things that's hard about it is that, at work, we don't always get it right. Sometimes we fail. And granted, those failures are always learning opportunities. But it can be really hard to one, like fail in front of your person, in front of your life person, partner, especially if it impacts their work. And two, it can be hard to watch your person fail. And so it's a little bit different, right? Like if you both have different jobs, you can just come home and vent and it's more about your perspective. But when you're working together and everything's intertwined, it's a lot harder. And so we've really had to learn how to like create space for that, to really like give each other the space to grow both as people and as leaders. And I think what's interesting about David and I is we do that in very different ways. We're both very committed to that, but like the things that I need to do on my journey are totally different than the things David needs to do on his journey. And so it really has been like learning to create space and learning to have patience for, we have different processes here and we're at different points in our journey. And then yeah, we had our son almost 3 years ago, and so that was an added layer too, and just like navigating just working hours, for example, something as simple as working hours. It's like my prime working hours are actually like in the evening, like the 4 to 7 range. And that just like doesn't exist for me anymore, because that's generally when I'm with my son and we're doing dinner. And so it's also just like learning to adapt for the season of life that we're in and having a lot of grace for ourselves. Like what we're doing is hard and we can say that it's hard and give ourselves grace for that.
Would you say that your leadership style has changed or evolved since you've become a parent?
I mean, motherhood it has changed me profoundly in so many different ways. And I think who I am as a person, I think how I prioritize things, I think, kind of all my relationships in my life. And so I think one thing is it's helped me be a little it's helped me be more discerning. It's helped me say no more. It's really helped me prioritize because again, I can't just, work 50 hours a week. And so I have to be really mindful about the things that I'm focusing on and also asking for help. Like, I can't do it all myself. I'm one of those people, like, I definitely, maybe 5, 6 years ago, like, I can just do it all myself. I can just work harder. I can just work longer. And it's just like, motherhood or not, I think as an entrepreneur, you just have to learn you can't do that for a long time, right? You're going to burn out. And so becoming a parent was like another layer of that. It's like, gotta make sure you get enough sleep every night. Can't do it all yourself. Gotta ask for help. So it's been a really good lesson in leadership. Sure.
I'm not sure if this is something that is because females were maybe a little more socialized to pick up more of the activity at home when we go into busier seasons of life. But I myself have learned too, as I got into my later 30s and 40s, that I had to get a whole lot more clear about what I have to let go of. Like, I can't do all those pieces. And like, what I either need to make space to ask for help for, or let go of altogether, or this is something that I need to throw money and delegate and have somebody else just do it all together. And having never been a man, I don't know if they struggle with that same thing, but definitely the female business owners I've been talking to, I think it's a little harder for us to learn how to delegate certain things. And I wish I had an answer to that. But on the note of that, what boundaries or rhythms have helped you stay grounded and avoid burnout as things have changed in your life and your business has grown?
Sleep. It's a very important one. Getting
God,
enough
yes.
sleep. I think, you were talking about delegation. I think that's been a really big one. We have such a great team. We have team members that have been with us for a long time too. And I'm just like so grateful for those team members and how they've evolved in our business. And kind of the responsibility that they've been able to step into. And then you also said learning what things you need to let go, like learning what things to say no to. There's a lot of things that feel super urgent, but are they important? Do they actually need to get done? And so I think because I've been in a situation recently where I literally just don't have the same amount of working hours that I used to, like I've had to make peace with that's not going to happen. I've got to let it go. Maybe it wasn't really that important to start with. So that has definitely helped. And then other kind of self care activities. I'm a big fan of acupuncture. I've been working with my acupuncturist now for over a decade. And so I think each person has something different in terms of like what helps them with like their self care and staying grounded. So for me, acupuncture and journaling and making sure I get enough sleep and drink enough water and some of those basics. But sometimes when you're busy working, you can blow past through some of those things.
I think water has been the big challenge for me this year, which is so funny because 3 years ago, that wasn't an issue at all. I guess because I was running more. And so I knew the hydration piece was, but this year, every time I turn around, I'm like, there's still coffee on my desk. I need to have a glass of water. Basically, we're just house plants. We need a little sunshine, we need some water, and we need rest.
And I think that's so you brought up like a great point. I think what's so interesting about that is we go through different seasons, right? So it's like what worked for us 5 years ago or whatever strategy we used 5 years ago is not going to be the same thing that works right now. And so it is this commitment to being like recognizing that we're seasonal creatures and that we have to like change and do things differently. What I need to do now in the season of like early motherhood is way different than what I did when I was like, first year entrepreneur and like David and I would work long hours and eat dinner at 10 o'clock. Like just very different seasons of life.
Recall, Christina, you mentioned that you're feeling called to use your voice more. What does that calling look like for you right now? And what do you hope it leads to?
The first step is recognizing it and going back to, some of my roots. In my younger years and throughout college, I wrote a lot and loved writing. And it's just not something that I've done very much in the last decade. And so I don't know what it looks like yet or what it means, but I know that I want to start committing to writing again and using my voice more and seeing where it goes. And I think what can be hard sometimes, like as a business owner, where it's, say you're launching a new project or a new plan, right? And you map out a timeline and this is my goal and this is what I'm going to do and this is what I'm going to do it by. And for something like this, it's like, I'm not sure, but not being scared to take the first step and just see where it evolves and see where it goes.
Christine, if you could offer one piece of advice to yourself when you were just starting out, what would it be?
Saying, I'm so proud of you. I think that it would be so easy to look back and maybe like catalog all of the mistakes. But gosh, like the courage, the audacity, the energy, the enthusiasm of that David and Christina that made that decision to do something really risky, to take a leap of faith. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of her. Like, I don't know if this Christina could do it. And so I think she would also be delighted to hear that, to hear that future Christina is proud of.
It's easy to look back and catalog the mistakes. And at the same time, your business is still thriving and growing. So, really, those mistakes are just like little guide points that we need to learn something and probably shift direction a little bit, as opposed to being mistakes. Did success look like to you at this stage, not just for business, but for you as a person?
I think, some of what we are doing now in terms of really focusing on sustainable growth, focusing on kind of the evolution of our product as we work towards shelf stability. I think we're just really focused and also feeling very grateful for our business holding us in the season of life that we're in. The season of early parenthood. My husband also, we recently moved his parents into an assisted living facility here in Asheville. And, that's a lot. And so we're just in a really interesting season of life and our business is holding us through that and has created flexibility for us to show up for family in the way that's really important to us while still moving forward with our business and the things that are important. And that's a really cool feeling to be there. And so there's a lot of hard work ahead of us and a lot of things that we want to do, but feeling successful in this moment for having that flexibility and having that focus in our business.
Running a values based business while planning for your family's future is a lot to hold. How do you approach those longer term decisions for both?
I think that, there's certain things that we visualize and certain things that we want. But if just kind of our experience over the last decade has taught us anything, is that just the unpredictable is going to happen. And I think, feeling really secure in your values and or what is important to you in this present moment and kind of taking each decision as they come. Like, is sometimes the best thing that we can do when things are uncertain, with my husband's parents and just like navigating what the next several years will look like. It's like there's a lot we don't know. But we can make the decisions to show up for family every week. And then in terms of our business, I think we have the vision of where we want to go, and that's really important. And we have our values that are a guidepost for that. And so, we can't just like do things blindly and be like, well, we don't know what's going to happen, so we're just not going to plan. But I think that there's the focus on the right now, like kind of like the next right thing, the next most important thing. And then kind of this is where we're trying to get to. And then a lot in between one step at a time. So I feel like sometimes it can be easier to see like this is what the next 12 months looks like. And this is maybe what 5, 10 years from now looks like. But the years like 2 through 9 are a little bit harder to see.
You familiar with the podcast, The One Thing?
It sounds familiar.
They talk often about a concept of goal setting to the now, where you take a big goal and you basically work backward from it to figure out what the appropriate action that you should be taking today is, like, and focusing just on one action. What's one action that I can take today that's going to move me closer to that? It's an interesting concept. It's kind of difficult to put into practice without sitting down and really allowing space for yourself to truly sit and like dream and do planning on dreaming. It's harder to do in the day-to-day business if you don't allocate time, but it sort of aligns with what you're saying about that murky middle. The goal setting to the now can help you work your way backward into it. As you've grown your team and taken on more leadership, how have you thought about supporting your people beyond just their day to day roles?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I love in my role and in being a leader is supporting my team members in their growth and evolution. And so for each team member, that looks a little bit different based on some of their goals. So yeah, and I think too, like as I'm growing and developing and as I'm learning things, it's like I'm putting tools in my tool bucket, and then when I'm showing up for my team members and we're having a one-on-one or they have some sort of challenge or they come to me with some sort of goal, I'm able to kind of like look through my toolbox and see if I have any tools that might help that. And so that's been really cool. And that's like a really rewarding thing for me to see our team members thrive and to see them, hitting the things that they want both professionally and personally. So I think it's still, still a work in progress, but definitely something I feel like I've settle isn't the right word, but that I've like really started to kind of stretch myself a little bit more in terms of like owning that role in leadership.
For somebody who is just starting out with a purpose driven brand, what's something you wish more people had told you that you would offer to them?
I think being really like crystal clear on your why. Your why as a human, your why as a business. Like, what is your North Star? Because you're going to need that when things get rough, because things are going to get rough. And so, if you don't have that guidepost to look back to, you can you can flounder a little bit. And I think kind of in some of our earlier years, like we just weren't as clear on that, or we were working on other aspects of our business, and that why is just so important, and revisiting it because it might evolve over time. And so the why when you started your business might be different 5 years in, and being honest with yourself about that. Because for some people, it might be, is my business still serving my why? And if it's not, then it might be time for some sort of change, whether it's a pivot or transitioning the business to somebody else or whatever it is. But if we're not living in alignment with our why, it's just going to create conflict and tension all over the place, personal and professional life.
Absolutely. And it's definitely when we go back to that discussion of what pieces do we need to let go of, like what activities are not, don't need to be on my plate anymore, being very clear on what I'm moving toward and my core values is what helps you make those decisions, what the appropriate things to edit out of your to do list are. Christina, what would you say leading a business with integrity looks like in practice for you?
There's a lot of noise out there, and there's a lot of companies and brands doing all sorts of things, and I think, you can feel the like pull or sway to do things that's not in alignment with your values. And so I think leading a business with integrity is putting decisions through the lens of your values. And also just like we were talking about how your why might evolve over time, like your values or the way you articulate them, right, might evolve a little bit over time. And so making space for those activities so that they can be a guidepost and it's not just kind of like being swayed by the external or what other people say you should be doing.
Pop quiz. Is there a book or a YouTube channel or a podcast that you're getting a lot of value out of or have gotten a lot of value out of that you would want our listeners to check out?
The Soul Sourced Entrepreneur by Christine Kane. She's actually Asheville based, and the book is all about kind of like leading a heart led business. But I just really love some of the concepts she talks about, and some of the weekly practices that she recommends. It's one of the probably more enjoyable quote, unquote, business books that I've read. And it's one of those where I like finish it and I was like, I want to read this again. So that is actually currently on my reading list to read again.
What's one lesson from your journey that you think every small business owner should hear?
Somebody gave us the advice when we were starting out that I probably should have taken more seriously, which is everything takes twice as long and costs 3 times as much. That is so true. It does. It takes way longer than you think, and it's gonna cost more money than you think. And then creating space for, like, listening to yourself, clarifying your why, working on yourself, not just, like, working in the business or on the business, but also as an entrepreneur, like, working on yourself because it's deeply connected. And sometimes, kind of looking back, I feel like there's been moments where, like, our personal growth has been stalled for some reason, maybe because we're working through burnout, and like that that impacted the business. And so our commitment to like show up every day and like be vulnerable and like grow and work on ourselves is one of the best things we can do for the business.
Christina, how would our listeners connect with you? Where would they go to find you on socials and tell them where they can visit if they want to try your products?
Absolutely. So you can learn more about Ginger's Revenge on our website, gingersrevenge.com. We are also on Facebook, and then you can find us on Instagram at Ginger's Rev. And our TC room is located in Asheville. It's right on Riverside Drive, just a couple miles north of downtown. We have great events going on, and then also ginger beers that you can maybe only find in the tasting room. So we would love to meet you and connect with you and hear what you think about the.
Before we let you go, is there any final words of advice that you would give to someone who is either thinking about or has just launched their own entrepreneurial journey?
I think that if you're feeling really called to do something and it's one of those things like in your mind and your heart that you just like can't stop thinking about it, but you're maybe feeling scared or unsure or you don't know how. This was actually like great advice that I got from a business coach I'm still working with. It's not sometimes that we don't know like what we want or what we want to do, is that we don't know how to do it. And that's what stops us. And so my advice would be like, if you feel that calling, just do it. You're going to figure out how to do it, but you just have to take the first step to get there.
That is absolutely sound advice. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Carolina Business Leadership Show. If you found value in today's episode, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss future conversations with business leaders across the Carolinas. And if you know someone who would be a great guest or a business owner who needs to hear this, share this episode with them. If you're in North or South Carolina and need help with health, life, or Medicare insurance, our team at Lifetime Insurance Agency is always here as a resource. We'll see you in the next episode.